right, welcome back to Roompact's ResEdChat. This podcast series is kind of a digital variety hour of presentations, webinars, interviews, really on topics of interest to housing and residence life professionals. And today, I'm really excited to have join me Camille Bonar, who is our ACUHO-I intern for this summer. Hi, Camille, how are you?
I'm great. How you doing? Did you like the little wave there?
I did like the wave. Now, where are you? You're in Iowa right now, is that right?
I am. I am actually in my office in our residence hall at Mayflower Hall, but in Iowa City at the University of Iowa, just doing the Roompact thing for the summer, getting it done.
Yeah. And they're letting you stay in the residence hall over the summer, right? But you're not technically working in residence life right now, right?
That is correct. They did not make me move out all of my stuff, all of my plants that I have. So I'm very, very happy about that. Very thankful they're letting me stay there.
That's great. That's awesome. Because I remember when especially at the start of my career, I moved every year. Like in between, grad school year one, grad school year two, move, start a new job, switch buildings, It was like, there was a period of time where like I moved every single year, and it's rough.
Yeah, I'm very happy that I love my parents, but I'm glad I didn't have to move back home for for 3 months for the summer, just moving all that stuff. So yes, very, very happy to stay in Iowa City. And of course, Iowa City, it's college town, so they have all of the festivals throughout the summer. So like Jazz Fest is my favorite thing ever, and I think it's happening this summer. So excited to be here with all the going ons that are going to be happening.
It's a great city. Like way back in the day, now I'm forgetting what it's called, but there's the Iowa College Personnel Association, ICPA.
Okay.
Or was, I'm not sure if it's still in existence. But we went to, when I was in grad school, we went to a conference there because I was at Western Illinois, which is not too far from where you are. And I've been in that city. It's awesome college town. Fun little city. It's a great place to be. So I'm envious of you because I miss that college town feel.
Yes, I'm pretty happy here. That's good.
Yeah, that's great. And now you're working on, so our listeners know, you're working on a master's in higher ed and student affairs there. Mm-hmm. But you didn't stop there because you're also doing a dual degree in public affairs with a concentration in public policy, right?
That's correct. So after my first semester in the HISA program, the Higher Ed and Student Affairs program, found out a lot of the issues our students are facing today are systemic. So I'm hoping that I'm going to go change the world through policy with this public affairs degree. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. What made you kind of decide to pursue that type of degree or that dual degree? And then what are you thinking you're going to do with it kind of afterwards? Like, are there certain jobs you have in mind, or are you not exactly sure at this point?
Yeah. So I guess to start out, I took a gap year in between going back and getting my master's here. So I worked corporate for a year, did that thing, worked 7 to 4, all those big people hours. And then I just decided that I really missed being on a college campus. So just a little bit about me, my transition from high school to college was super duper rough. And so I think that education is something that's really personal. My experience in higher education was super personal. And so I wanted to be able to support students that may have like kind of slipped through the cracks, because that's kind of how I felt about some of my college experience. And so that's what made me really want to go back into student affairs. I guess kind of another segue, so one of the things that really helped me with like process through my transition was I got a job, which gave me some structure. But the first job that I had on campus was actually working at Kinnick Stadium in the president's suite for football games. And so I met a lot of administrators there, and they ended up hiring me to work at the president's residence for like events at the end of the year. And so that was kind of my first exposure to like the administrative portion of higher ed. And I just became really passionate about that because I do like the structure, but I also like helping students. So that's kind of what led me into the higher ed and student affairs realm. Wanted to be back on campus, and then with public affairs, like I said, just policy wise, I feel like there's a lot that can be done there. I know it's really challenging, but I think that it's definitely beneficial and something that we could use support in. So
Yeah,
that's kind of what led me to pursue the dual degree.
that's awesome. That's awesome. I have a theory. So, in terms of for when folks go into student affairs, they go into student affairs for two reasons. It's always one of two reasons, and it is they had a bad experience or they had a really good experience, right? It's one or the other. It's not, there's not anyone in between, meaning like, I had a bad experience. I don't want other people to have this experience, so I want to change it. So that's why I want to do this. Or I had such an amazing experience. I want to keep doing this on and on for kind of ever. I always feel like it's one of those two things. In fact, fun backstory to Roompact. Roompact exists because our founder had a bad experience with a roommate during his college years. And that's what gave him the idea to be like, maybe we should create software that can help with roommate conflict, because that's originally what Roompact started as, was just that kind of narrow niche. So it's either you had a poor experience or you had a really good experience. Maybe you had a little bit of both. I don't know, but
I
it's
think
always
that's so sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
no,
you.
no, no.
No, I think that's so true though. Like even within our cohort, we're like divided. Like people had a great experience, people had a not so great experience, and that's
Yeah,
what brought us here. So
yeah.
that's super funny that you say that.
Yeah, because it's also true of RAs. Like, my RA was horrible. I'm going to be the best RA because I want to fix it. Or my RA was so great. I want to be just like them, right? Like, it's always one or the other, I feel. Now, well, let's talk a little bit about this internship, because I know some people that are listening, either they may be grad students or undergraduate students thinking about doing an internship, or maybe they're professionals that are supervising an intern and kind of want some insight into that intern experience so they can be better supervisors, or support them better. But what made you decide to pursue an ACUHO-I internship specifically? And actually,
Absolutely.
maybe I should tell folks a little bit too. And ACUHO-I runs a process. ACUHO-I, the Association of College and University Housing Officers International, where folks can apply for internships, and so they're obviously going to be within the housing realm. And they run it. It's much more formal, so it's not a kind of one-off thing, but there's a whole process to it and dates and deadlines that you have to meet. But they've been doing it for years. I'm a past ACUHO-I intern. I was at University of Alaska Anchorage, but that's kind of what the ACUHO-I intern process is. But tell us a little bit about what made you decide to kind of go through that, and your decision-making process about it.
Absolutely. So my assistantship for my grad program is within housing and dining at the University of Iowa. So I've been working as an assistant hall coordinator, and a lot of I did my undergrad at Iowa as well. And so I was hoping that through ACUHO-I, I would be able to get some more experience kind of outside of that Big Ten public institution. And so there were lots of opportunities to kind of go and get that different experience, but there was enough similarities to the position where they're like conference interns, where it wouldn't be completely nerve-wracking to go and like start a new job. Like I would have some experience. So that's really what kind of sparked my interest in the ACUHO-I process. And then I found Roompact, which was kind of a different one-off experience, I guess, from the other positions that were listed there. And I was super interested in that. Have an interest in marketing and public relations, and just knew that that Roompact was super flexible in what they expected of their interns. So really excited to be here. But that's kind of the beginning of the process anyway.
Yeah, well, we're excited to have you. One of the things, because I mentioned I was an ACUHO-I intern, and it was a really positive experience for me, and I loved it, and I think the program has been great. So one of the things when I started working at Roompact was I said, I want to be able to host an ACUHO-I intern, because I want to provide that to someone else, that experience. And then the other part of it is, you know, an internship with Roompact is very different from, I'd say, well, I was going to say a majority, but pretty much all the other internship opportunities that are available through the process. Like, it's just, most of them are going to be conference related. They're going to be help ResEd update its manuals and its training. They're going to be in those kinds of veins. And this would be something completely different. So this is something I wanted for a few years. And I think also too, with housing usually being a part, providing housing being a part of that internship, it was always difficult when Roompact had a physical office. So like, where are we good? We don't have housing on campus. Where are we going to put an intern? So that was kind of a barrier that we would have not needed to think through. But now with COVID and allowing remote internships, that's not as much of a big deal. So it's kind of exciting. But how was the process of going through applying and all that and getting ready and doing the interviews? Like, what is that? I know what it looks from the employer side now, but how does it look from the candidate side?
Yes. So basically I guess talking about my process here, you pay a fee and then you get the list of all of the internships that are available for the summer. I made a pros and cons list in an Excel document and listed out kind of what the things were that were important to me, what some of the basic duties were, location wise, like where they were located, what the cost of living would look like, and then compensation, obviously, as a grad student is pretty important. So also that was another factor for me. And from there, I went through and started writing cover letters, had a few people who were kind enough to look over my cover letters for me, which was super nice. And then you submit those through the ACUHO-I page. It's like a really compact website, which is super duper helpful, so that you can just kind of go through and communicate with all of the institutions directly through that website. So after I submitted the applications, then there's kind of a little bit of a waiting period while applications are being reviewed, which during any job interview process is completely nerve-wracking, but you just wait and get it done. And then the institutions can mark you as like a pick, like an interest pick, and you can do the same for them. And then eventually the day comes and they will offer you an interview time if you fit some of their needs. And then it kind of depends on the institution, but you can have like either one or up to 2 or 3 interviews. And then they can make you an offer. So the interview process, I was lucky enough to have one of our second-year master's students who was doing the job search compile a list of like common interview questions. So I was able to prepare for that, which I would definitely recommend going through the interview process. Like, you got to have your elevator pitch ready. So that was super helpful, but yeah.
Yeah. No, well, and you mentioned the cover letters. We haven't really talked about, like, we haven't done kind of like a post-hire kind of like, oh, let's talk about that process yet. But I would say the personalized cover letters for us was a real big differentiator. That's probably in part, I mean, there were many reasons, but that was a big factor, I think, in your getting to the interview stage with us, because I wanted to know, like, why this position? And especially since our position was particularly unique, I wanted to see a strong interest, like, oh, here's why this, why does it fit in with my goals and things like that. So having a personalized cover letter or some kind of context where it's like, here's why, was really, really huge. Because some candidates do not personalize the cover letters. They're just generic across all of them. Which I think is fine if you're, maybe applying for a position that's plentiful, like let's say with summer RD, maybe it's not as important. But because ours was unique, I think that was you didn't know it, but that was a key reason you made it through. Was that, because that's what really sparked our interest.
Cool.
Yeah. And interview wise, this would be kind of, I mean, you took a gap year, so you probably had some experience interviewing for jobs, right? But for most folks, this would be kind of their first interview. Maybe for grad school you had some, but this is this like ramps it up a little bit. I feel like it's closer to that like full-time job type interview. you mentioned kind of asking a second year for questions. What other things did you do to prepare or get yourself ready for interviews?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I'm a big believer in researching the institution or the organization that you are planning on hopefully getting a position with. So I definitely looked over the website. I also am like a big believer in like peer or colleague reviews. So like looking on Glassdoor and kind of seeing what people who have worked there or are currently working there have to say about the company. Reddit is also a really great resource for like larger institutions. They usually have a lot of information about the interview process. Sometimes you can get sample questions there. So doing research before I think is really important. But then also like I meditated before my interviews because
Great.
I'm really good at like working myself up before things. So just like sitting down and doing a 5-minute meditation to like kind of slow your heart rate and get you in the zone to just like be and present your best self. I think those were really integral to my success.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And now you've started with us. So you've been through almost, we're at a week and a half point. We're actually almost exactly at a week and a half point. Thinking about maybe potential interns, people that are looking at internships for the summer, now that you've kind of made this transition, what was that transition like for you? What were the things you were thinking about beforehand? What are the things that you found as you started? Like if you had to give those folks some guidance on what to expect, what would you tell them?
Yeah. So I think number one is going to be like communicating your needs. So I think you and we had a lot of communication prior to my actual start date about kind of what my expectations were going into this, what your expectations were, so that we could align what those needs looked like. So just being like really communicative in kind of what your expectations are, I think is going to be number one. Number two is something that I'm still working on, but I would say like adjusting your expectations. So
Yeah,
it's really easy to read a job description and say like, oh, this is what the job's going to be like. These are going to be what my duties are, and get really excited about that. But that's not always the reality. And so I
yeah,
think being able to have like comfort in yourself to like believe in your capabilities is really important, but then also being able to adjust those expectations is going to be really integral to success in any position.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the things I think when I thought of communication, because like one of my goals was to communicate with you early, to try to communicate with you often, and I felt like I could have even actually done more of that. But was what I learned from my internship. So when I was, working with the folks at University of Alaska Anchorage, so UAA, we'll go for UAA because it's a little shorter. They were great at it, and part of their experience was you're going to go live in Anchorage for the summer. Like that's cool. Like they knew this was an experience for an intern, not just the work experience, but I mean, you get to live in Alaska for a summer, which that's awesome. And so they did an amazing job with welcome. Like we would get these envelopes. This is also back in like 2001. So postal mail was more of a thing at that time. Internet was around, but less so. But postal mail was a thing. So they'd send us these huge envelopes, like with like brochures for like every site in and around Anchorage to try to like get us excited and things like that. And so they did a really great job with kind of both some professional onboarding, but also just like get excited for living in Alaska. And I think that's what carried through for me when I was thinking about the experience I wanted you to have. Of course, our position is remote. So like, I mean, what do I send you to get you excited to work remote, right? Like, here's a thumb drive. Here's an AOL CD from the 90s. Like, I mean, there's nothing to get you excited about working remote. I don't know what that would have been. I don't know, gosh. But that makes sense too in terms of the expectations, like setting that. I guess I never really totally thought that. I think as a supervisor, one of the things that I try to think of too is check in on that. So knowing that that's a reality and that's natural, how are things different? Can we make adjustments? Like, is something completely awry where you're like, whoa, this is totally not what I was expecting, or I want to get this, and I just need to know that in order to try to help make that happen.
Mhm.
But that's really good advice. Speaking of that kind of track, what advice would you give for a supervisor? Things that a supervisor might want to keep in mind to be better supportive for an ACUHO-I intern going through this.
So I think as a supervisor, again, it's important for them to be able to adjust their expectations. Like you hire this person and you're excited for them to come, and you get to know them through the interview process a little bit, but making sure like that you remember that they're a student as well. I think you did a really good job when we first were talking about what the expectations were for the position. Was like, you're like, we're working on like developing you as like a practitioner, and so like our expectations are going to be different than if we were hiring you on full time. So like especially for some of those positions where they may have a little bit of experience, like still knowing that there's going to be development, there's going to be a learning curve that happens, I think is really important. And then I'm also a big believer in like goal setting. So like you are within this position already, but making sure that you're kind of working on professional development with the individual as well, like where they want to go. I think those are two really important things.
Yeah, yeah. We haven't really had the professional development conversation like
We have
explicitly.
not.
No, we haven't. Let's have that now. I'm going to spring this on you in the middle of the podcast. What are the kinds of things that you would want to learn more about, be it Roompact wise, or, like I obviously have some connections and some other folks, like I can go outside kind of the Roompact thing, but what would be some goals that you think I might help with, or others at Roompact might help with?
Yeah. I think one of the things I was not expecting when I came into the higher ed student affairs field is how close and tight knit the community is. Like it's quite small. So I think for me, one of the things that you all would be able to help with is just like networking and introducing me to people, just because I think that that's really important. So being able to make those connections, whether that's in passing, whether that's setting up, we talked a little bit about this, like doing like informative interviews, just things like that, just to make some of those connections, I think is really important. And then one of the other things that is one of my goals, and I know kind of aligns with Roompact, is like diversity, equity, and inclusion training. So working kind of towards the B Corp initiative and certification is something that I'm interested in as well.
Yeah. Well, now I've already got ideas.
Good. That's what we love to
glad we
hear.
had this conversation. So what I hear you saying is you are now going to take over hosting duties of this podcast and interview professionals. I heard that. I mean, that could be an option, but
it could be an option. We could do a couple of them.
But yeah, I've already got some kind of ideas. Like, I feel like we need to. I'm glad we had this conversation, because another thing about, I think, ACUHO-I internships in general, the summer goes fast, right? Like if we're like, oh, we'll get to that. Oh, we'll get to that. We could be 2-3 weeks from now, and we'll be like, oh my God, you're leaving soon, right? Like they go really, really quickly. So you kind of have to think of those things beforehand.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I've already got some ideas, so we'll have to talk about. We won't have to have our one-on-one recorded for the world to hear, but I already got some ideas with that. And I will say, so you mentioned B Corp, which I don't think we've talked about on any episodes here so far. Roompact's working towards becoming a certified B Corporation, which is public benefit corporation. And it means you meet certain standards of social responsibility, and that's broadly speaking. So kind of triple bottom line. So do you treat your employees well? Do you make sure that your practices are in line with a sustainable environment, supporting in terms of broader social things. So it's kind of making sure that your company is being socially responsible across a number of factors. And it's been a really fun process to kind of go through and start to figure some of those things out. So definitely one of the areas that I'm going to ask for help with you is I've started to document some of the things that we've done so that departments could actually maybe take inspiration from it. Meaning, here's what we've done as a company. If you're a housing and residence life department, you could do some of these same things that we're doing. Because I think we can all get better at it, right? It's an iterative process. Things change over time. Society evolves. We figure these things out, but it could be really good. Well, awesome. I think maybe wrap it up for today. Get you off the spot. Definitely going to have you back though. We'll do this again at kind of the end of your internship experience and check in and see how things are going. I just wanted to thank you for being on. Any final thoughts of words of wisdom that you may have for anyone watching?
Oh gosh. I don't think so. I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for having me. And I hope that I was able to provide some insight into the ACUHO-I intern experience.
Yeah. Sorry to throw you that curveball. I was like, I feel like we need to end on something more than just me talking, like on some poignant point. And I was like, maybe if I throw it over to Camille, she'll come up with something randomly that's like this beautiful flower to end it on.
I feel like that's always my thing when I'm writing an essay. I'm like, oh, I'm going to come up with like some grandiose, but like simultaneously pithy statement to end my essay with. And it just, sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't.
Well, this is also an experiment for me, right? Like, we haven't been doing this podcast that long, and podcasts are hard. Like not like logistically hard, but like being a good interviewer, having conversation, things like it's not easy. It's a different skill set, right? It's a different skill set and things like that. So I appreciate you learning alongside me in this process, and we'll be sure to have you back on as we reach towards the end. So that's it for this episode of ResEdChat. Thanks everyone, and we'll see you next week.